Another gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses. We have a markup of legislation concerning Medicare going on at the same time, next building over, but I have had a chance to review your written testimony and appreciate it and your appearance here today. It seems to me that the Trump administration's immigration philosophy is sick in both heart and mind. His campaign of stoking fear and prejudice ignores reality, a reality you've described this morning, and it lashes out against the most vulnerable. He relies upon authoritarian tactics to twist our laws and to inflict cruelty. He's lashed out by stripping protections for dreamers, undermining the legal status of high-tech visa and green card holders, and inflicting cruelty on asylum-seeking children on our border. We're all the worse off for these policies. Let's talk about this failure of the Congress to address immigration, because it is correct that there's been a complete failure of the Congress to address immigration, but it didn't begin this year. Indeed, tomorrow, to be exact to the day, June 27, 2013, 6 years ago, the United States Senate passed by an overwhelming bipartisan majority comprehensive immigration reform. But for the obstruction of Republicans has that legislation been blocked. You will recall that Speaker Boehner first, after making many promises to the contrary, refused to let the House vote on that comprehensive immigration reform. And after him, Speaker Ryan did exactly the same thing. Our immigration system could and should have been repaired long ago, but Republicans have stood in the way to prevent any comprehensive immigration reform. Unfortunately, we now have a president who likes railing about immigration far more than doing anything about it, who relies on imagined crises that he created himself, and people can see through that, no matter the cost of human life, as we see at the border today. This is a president who, when presented with a bipartisan, consensus-built option sitting there with him in the White House, exclaimed that he wanted more immigrants from Norway and referred to Central African and Central American countries with an expletive that I will not repeat this morning, but is well known and reflects his heart, which goes to the very core of bigotry around this policy. So what we're tasked with today is laying out a framework of what a president with the slightest sense of human decency and humanity might be able to do the year after next. And your testimony is important in doing that. Meanwhile, this year, the House has already recognized that our dreamers who have cleared a criminal background check are contributing in our country. They should not have to rely only on court decisions, which the Trump administration is trying to undermine in order to be assured for them and for their employers and their schools that they're able to continue here. Unfortunately, the situation, again, when we talk about the failure of Congress, yes, there's a failure of Congress. There's a failure of now the majority leader in the Senate doing exactly the same thing that House speakers under Republican control did in the past, refusing to even let the Senate consider protection for our dreamers, the easiest and most direct piece of immigration legislation that we might approve. And then there is the claim of the president recently that his solution to the immigration problems that we face is to deport 1 million people from this country. Fortunately, the president, because we have now an acting Homeland Security Secretary, a vacancy for the head of Customs and Border Protection, an acting head for Citizenship and Immigration Services, has given us an immigration policy with many tweets, but with no leadership, with a lack of organization, and with general incompetence. And so many of our immigrants and the businesses and industries that depend upon them are protected in some cases by our courts and in other cases by just the incompetence of this administration in carrying out its policies. All objective economists who've looked at this recognize that giving our dreamers legal status, that stop tearing families apart and let those who have been here legally in our country contribute to our economy will aid us greatly. The irony in Texas is so great. We face worker shortages right now, particularly in construction, in agriculture, in the service industries. Those are the industries that will be hurt the most if this heartless policy of deporting and separating families is allowed to develop. I have confidence in the lack of leadership of this administration and its total incompetence that that will not occur. But I appreciate your testimony about what a brighter day in America might hold, not only for immigrants, but for all of our country, and that the Statue of Liberty was calling out not just to Norway, but to all the world. And I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired, and now I yield 5 minutes to another gentleman from Texas, Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,